All right. So today we're going to be focusing on the box for this lecture. So I'm in the lecture project. We're doing all the same things that you guys are going to do in the lab, which is we now want to do a layered material. So with the pulley or like even the scraper, you know how when you guys were building this thing, obviously it's just one texture file. But sometimes when you're building materials, it might be easier for you guys to break it up. So it's multiple materials or multiple textures stacking together. And you guys remember doing layered textures a little bit with Tony? You definitely will remember it when you see it. This is going to bring back some traumatic memories. Do you remember this? Yes, everyone, you probably don't have pleasant memories about it. Yeah. I don't remember all the projects you're doing. I think he mentioned that there was something with like a hammer or something. Does that sound familiar? Oh, the thermos. The thermos. Yeah. Okay. And I thought they used to have a practical where they're doing like a wrench. Yeah, wrench. It was some like a tool that had like a weird imprint or like a label on it. So the whole thing with this, like when you guys were doing it before, is this was basically your way to sort of combine things kind of like Photoshop. Like Photoshop has layers, this has layers, but the problem with this thing, and I still use it occasionally, is that you all probably remember the last time you did it, this was not the most intuitive looking node. Like it's just very confusing. I'm sure you all remember clicking around and making multiple layers by mistake. You know, like I'm trying to delete one, I made 3 layers, I didn't want to, and you're trying to figure out what's the foreground, what's the background, what's the blend mode supposed to be. There's alphas, just like a mask in Photoshop. So again, it's a lot of the same concepts, but Autodesk hasn't updated this node since I've been using it. This, aside from it being a darker shade of gray, that's it. So this is ancient, and I don't know if it's on their to-do list. I'm assuming they just don't care about this node anymore, but they're not doing anything with it. So we will not be using the layered texture. What we're going to do instead is we're going to be using a layered material, which is a little different. So think of it kind of like let's say with the pulley, if you guys built a full pulley material and you wanted to put like paint splatters on top of it, like a different material, or you wanted to put just like a sticker on it, you would be able to make the 2 materials independently. You would make your pulley material, you'd make another material for the sticker, and then they would be able to combine together similar to how Photoshop works, where one would layer over the other. Now to do that, like if we focus on the box, what I'm going to do is in the Hypershade, make a new graph again, like a new tab. I'm going to call this box material. Now the material we want is going to be the Pixar layer surface. So this is the one you guys were doing before, Pixar surface. We're doing that guy. And again, if you're using the little buttons on the shelf, if you right click, it's right there. The little thing with the star. That's the layer surface. So let's just all try making it just so you can kind of see what it looks like, because it is a little different looking than the other one. So here's Pixar layer surface. Now as soon as this drops in, you can see this looks like a lot more stuff. And we have to figure out what the kind of the order of these nodes are supposed to be. So let's immediately just reorganize this. You want to have it set up so the gray node, this is your material, the main material, move that kind of to the right. Something called the layer mixer should be next to it. And then there are 2 layer nodes called Pixar layer 1, Pixar layer 2. So you're trying to organize it just so it looks sort of like this. So just do that real quick. Just get the organization right. That probably means that you made the Pixar layer surface earlier at some point. It could have just been by mistake, or you're just playing around with stuff. So there's probably another random Pixar layer material in your Hypershade somewhere. Yeah. All right. I'm immediately going to rename the material, the gray one, just kind of rename that to like box material. In the lab, you'll call it like wall material, but just rename that guy. And let's just look at a couple things here. We'll get to these blue guys in a minute. Let's just look at this, because again, this is your material. Now look at it, and you'll notice something looks really different. Here's the diffuse area. Remember like what was in the diffuse section before? We're missing a lot of stuff. I don't see the color. I don't see roughness. I don't see the gain slider you guys had. Here's primary spec. This looks completely different. Like, where's my edge color? Where's the index of refraction, the coefficient? So you can tell that the material looks like it's missing a bunch of things, right? It's hidden. So the way this is kind of set up is, think of this node right here as not really the material you're going to be editing a lot with. This is more like the final section where all the different layered materials come together. So this is fairly limited on what you can actually change. So we're missing a lot of the color sliders, the roughness attributes. It's a lot of stuff we're not really concerned about. Now, if you look over here to the left, you should be seeing two different layer nodes. They're blue. Click on like the first one, like Pixar Layer 1, and look at this. This is a little closer to kind of what we were seeing before. There's color, there's a specular area, there's all my sliders I was missing, right? They're kind of hidden in here. And the Pixar Layer 2 is the same thing. If you click on it, there's my color slider. So the hardest part for you guys is just sort of understanding when you're looking at it, which attributes are on the layer itself, and then which attributes are still buried back on the original material, because they are broken up a little bit. And then if you look at the layer mixer, click on that node, look at that guy. The layer mixer, think of this sort of like your Photoshop layers. The layer mixer, this is where it's combining all the layers together. This is determining the layer order. You have a mask, so it's kind of like Photoshop where you could put in a black and white texture to control which layer sits on top of which layer and is visible, or what part's transparent to see through it. Now, when we start this thing off, what we want to do is on the Pixar Layer Mixer, open the area called Layer 1, because see how we have like a base layer? Think of the base layer as being your background, like the bottom layer for everything. Now, if you guys are going to be doing the wall in the lab, your base layer, which is Layer 1, that guy, this is the base layer, hence why that name matches that right there. This would be your wall texture. The one above it, which we will get to in a little bit, this would be the layer for like dirt, paint splatters, a poster you put on the wall, stickers, whatever you're trying to go for. That would be one of these layers above it. Now, because when we first kind of make the Pixar layer surface, it does start with two different layers already visible. What we want to do first is you click on the layer mixer, and let's immediately uncheck the enabled on Layer 1. Think of it like turning off the visibility of like your top layer in Photoshop. I just want to turn that off so I'm not even seeing the second layer yet. Let's just get the first layer working, then we'll come back to this guy. So again, you click on your layer mixer, go to Layer 1, uncheck enabled. Eventually we will fix this guy, but we don't want to see it yet. We're going to get the base layer working first. Now on the base layer, let's try just renaming these so they're not just called Pixar Layer 1. It might be kind of useful to name these so we know which one's which texture. On Pixar Layer 1, let's call this box layer. Or in your case for the lab, maybe the wall layer or the stone layer. Now what we're going to do is kind of move this layer up here out of the way, move this other Pixar layer 2 below it kind of out of the way. We're going to build the whole material network just for this one layer first. We're going to render it, make sure it looks good. And once we get the box out of the way, then we're going to move on to this one, our second layer, try to get that working, and then kind of figure out how do you get both of these guys to play together, which will mean we're going to use some type of alpha right here. Okay. So over here on the box layer, on the color for diffuse, let's put in our file node. Let's just make sure this even like renders. So go to your first layer, color, hit the little connection box next to color, and just make a simple 2D file. You can also make the file node in the Hypershade ahead of time if you want to connect it that way. But just make a file node, load in the box texture. It's already in the source images for this project. And in the lab, when you guys do the wall texture is provided for you. You just go to the source images, pick it. It's going to look like the wall. You don't have to UV the wall or anything. It's going to line up in the right spot. Just load in your texture. Now let's kind of go through those different options over here in the file node again, just like we were talking about earlier. For the color file, what should this be set to? Oh yeah, question. What do you mean? Oh, no, yeah. It will not. I think if you hit the S on the file node, you might see it. Maybe not. Yeah. I think because this one's a little more complicated, the viewport's just not going to be able to draw it. Yeah. Is anyone, like, so let's all try it out, make sure we're all seeing the same thing. You guys all have, like, the file connected to the material at this point? Just hit the S on the file. Is anybody seeing the texture file show up? You're actually seeing it? Or not? You are. You're seeing it too? Okay. I'm not, which is unfortunate. So don't be surprised if you guys notice that it doesn't show up in the viewer. As long as it renders, that's all I'm really concerned about. Now over here, what do we have to set some of these to? So for our color file, this should be sRGB. We need to add those RenderMan controls though, down here. So at the top, attributes, RenderMan, add texture controls. Go down to the bottom. There's your extra options that popped up. And this is the one that we turn on, linearize sRGB. So just add your RenderMan texture controls, go down to those options. Once you've added them, scroll down, turn on linearize sRGB. Alpha's luminance is used for any time you're trying to use the file like for a black and white connection. Mainly if you have a connection where you see the out alpha going somewhere, that's probably the time when you turn on Alpha's luminance. Yeah, when we do the raw one, exactly, yeah. So I think what we want to do, since we do have like the basic layer on there, oh, you know why mine's not showing up? Didn't even assign the material. Rookie move. Send me back to 3DF. Let's assign the material. That might help. So I'm going to click on the box. Just assign that guy. Now, when you assign the material, remember that this is the thing you're assigning. It's the gray node. I know we're working on this one layer, but you can't assign this to the object. This is the material you're assigning. So assign that guy to the object. Box material, or whatever you named it. Let me see if this shows up now, if I turn that on and off. Oh man, there it is. Hit the S on that texture file and you should see it. Okay, let me see what happens. Oh, yes, on that. Yeah, no worries. All right. So apparently, like if we do S on the individual texture nodes, we can see it. But unfortunately, if that's off, you can't really preview the full material. So if you don't have S turned on, you'll probably notice it keeps going back to gray. Not a big deal. It's still going to render fine. So let's just try kicking off an IPR and just looking at the object and just kind of make sure that we are seeing this. There it is. So mine is showing up. Is anyone getting gray? Like flat gray? Like where you have the texture file connected, but when you're rendering it, it looks like you're not seeing it in the actual render. It's just like a gray color. What you want to be careful about is if you're seeing gray, remember that on that layer mixer, you know how this thing came with the 2 layers by default? If you forget to disable the second layer, see what happened to my texture? Because the second layer is just a gray surface. Like it doesn't have anything on it yet. I haven't done anything to that layer. So it's just turning to gray. So that second layer, called layer 1, that should be off for now. We'll come to that guy later. All right, we got the color file connected. Let's try doing a few of the other really easy things here to get more of the material built. So what else do we need? Yeah, question? What's happening? Are you getting like an error? Anyone else having issues with the render? Not even kick it off? If it doesn't work, it probably is. It could be something really simple. IEM profiles alike, or yeah. Oh, so it's on the file. It's actually like, oh yeah. No, it's because like the property. I don't think the property and doesn't generate all the same stuff. Yeah, right. And that. Yeah. Right. Yeah, we'll connect it. For now, yeah, for now, don't worry about it. It shouldn't really make that big of an issue for anything. I may have to sit down in the lab and see wires. All right. So let's just try to kind of keep trying to move forward here. I know there's a couple of you guys that have some random weird issues where it's not rendering. Is that one still not launching? Okay. Was anyone else having an issue where when you tried to load the RenderMan texture controls, it didn't do anything at all? Like nothing appeared? It is? Okay. All right. So let's just kind of focus on the box right now. Like all we've got is the diffuse color connected, like our most basic thing. Do we see the texture? Yes, it's working. And I know like you guys might want to darken it a little bit with gain, you know, like we did before, making that lighter, darker. But let's not worry about that right now. What do we need to do for the diffuse? We also want to have bump, right? The diffuse should be bumpy. So let's yeah, we're gonna do like that's where we do the extra file, we duplicate it, that whole like V coordinate to ramp the the alpha to V chord thing. So let's try doing that. Click on your file node, the color file, and do edit, duplicate with connections and network. So again, click on your texture file node, and right in the hypershade, edit, duplicate with connections and network. Stupid. Every time I do that, it's going to rearrange my nodes. That's going to drive me nuts. There's my second file node. Are you guys seeing yours pop too when you do it? Wonderful. Thank you, Autodesk, for coding that. Yeah. Oh, they've all been, yeah, they've been moved around too. Yeah, because I use like muscle memory a lot, and I just out of habit like gesture to that corner. It's the wrong component. Yeah. I know. All right. So on our duplicate file, what do we need to do to this guy? Yeah. 1 on the duplicate file, change your color space to raw. This is the one that should be raw color space. And this is the one that also has linearize sRGB off. So again, your first file, sRGB color space, and the linearize sRGB is checked on. This is right in the file node. Your duplicate file has a raw color space and linearize is turned off. We need to now make the black and white texture for the bump. So hit tab, let's type in ramp, and we want to make the ramp texture. It's your basic 2D ramp. Do we need this guy? We don't. Delete the placement node, so it's literally just the ramp hanging out by itself. What do I have to do from here to get that ramp to look like a black and white texture? Yep. Out alpha to V coord. So drag the out alpha from the file to V coord on the ramp. There's one thing we're missing. Someone said it earlier. When you do the out alpha, don't forget on that file node to turn on alpha's luminance under color balance. And if you guys want, because I know it's one of those things where how do you keep track of which one you need to turn that on, which one do you not need to turn alpha's luminance on. If you want to play it safe, you could just always turn that on just out of habit and just, for the most part, it's going to work. But generally, it would be on any file where you see you're doing an out alpha connection. So if you notice the file node has an out alpha doing anything, there's a good chance you do want that turned on. Like when do you, I mean, it's kind of a good question here, but when do you think that you would want that off and you still were using an out alpha? Like when would that be a good idea if we didn't have alpha's luminance? Yeah, so this is just determining where the alpha channel is coming from. If this is on, it's using the color channels to generate the alpha. It's almost like taking the 3 color channels and just turning it to one black and white alpha. If this is off, it means there is an actual alpha channel in the file. Like you saved the targa with an alpha channel in it. And if that's the one you want, then you can leave it turned off. But for you guys, just leave it on. All right. Got a ramp. I'm going to rename this box bump. Now, before I connect this thing to our layer over here, we need the bump 2D node. Because remember, that won't kind of create on its own. We need to make it. So let's all do tab and bump 2D. Let's make that guy. Bump 2D. And then on this one, it's just dragging the out alpha from your ramp to the bump value on bump 2D. So this is my ramp. The out alpha goes to bump value on bump 2D. And from here, all we're doing is trying to connect the bump 2D node to the bump attribute. And remember, like we talked about earlier, don't connect it to the bump under the diffuse. We want it to do everything. The whole material should be bumpy, just not diffuse. So connect your bump 2D to the global bump. Just click on your layer, look for global bump. It's way down the bottom. Middle mouse drag that to the attribute. And I can see already in the render, I think mine is, it's turning bumpy. It's not looking good. It's almost too bumpy. Yeah, exactly. It has like a wood kind of feel to it just because it's pushed so far. So just kind of see what it looks like. If you guys want, artistically figure out how much bump you want to use for this thing, For the stone wall in the lab, you actually probably will have the bump cranked up quite a bit, so it has some nice detail to it. But for the cardboard, like, I don't know, that just seems a little too much. So I may take this and do like a bump depth of like 0.5 and just cut it in half. But that should be okay. And I'm also going to try doing a cropped render, so I'm not rendering the whole damn image. So I'm going to use the crop tool, drag over the box, and hit R just to refresh it so it's in that one area. Okay, so bump is good. Now, aside from the bump, like what were some other things we'd maybe want to do to the box? Just like from what you guys went through over the last couple labs, what else would be an important thing for the box? What did you guys do to the pulley, aside from make a color file and put in bump? Yeah, spec, like reflection. Now, for the cardboard, we know it's going to be pretty subtle, right? The cardboard is not going to be very shiny, so it's not like we need to crank this thing up. And another kind of nice thing about this is when you guys were doing the pulley and the scraper, remember that you were making all these little black and white maps for specularity to control the roughness, to control the intensity of the speck, like how bright the highlight is. We could do that, but you have to kind of remember that the only reason we did that for the pulley and the scraper was, you know how when you look at the pulley, there were obviously two really different materials going on, paint and rust? That's the only reason we wanted to break it up, because there's very different parts of the texture. Now, if you kind of think about the box, let's just pretend this isn't here, but the rest of the box, like the cardboard, do you think that even really needs a map to say this is more reflective here and less reflective there? Like, it's all cardboard, right? The same thing when you get to the lab. When you end up doing the wall, you don't even need to put a texture in the spec area because it's all stone. It's supposed to reflect all the same way. So this is going to make it a lot easier for us. So all we've got to do is over here in the layer, we want to first off enable our spec. Now, when you turn it on, this is a little weird here, but remember when we were doing it before, like with the regular Pixar surface, you guys were picking between artistic and physical, and everyone picked physical, right? We were just using that for the whole lecture. Now, if you look at this layer, notice how there's no drop down. Where is the artistic physical? They're kind of just throwing them all together, but it's not showing you how to pick which one you want. Go back to your main material. Like, click on this guy and look under the primary spec on the original material. And I know this doesn't show us much of anything because we didn't even see color on it, but if you look under primary spec, look what's there. This is where it's giving you the option to go back and forth. And again, I know it's a little confusing because it's splitting all that up for us, but it's fine. Just go to the material, change this to physical, and let's now go back over here to the layer again. So when you turn it to physical, the only things that work are these guys right here, roughness and edge color, and your gain if you want to turn it on. So let's try turning the enable on, just to enable primary spec. So I'm going to turn that checkbox on. I don't think we're going to see any change yet, but let's bump up the gain on it. And let's crank the gain up to 1, and then take the edge color and start cranking that up, maybe to like 0.5. Oh, something's happening. So let me zoom in on that so you can see my attributes. It's just under primary spec, all I've done is hit the enable checkbox, crank the gain up. The gain, just think of it kind of like a black and white intensity attribute, like how much of this do you want to see? And then I'm cranking the hell out of the edge color, at least a 0.5. Is everyone seeing like some amount of shininess on the box? It's a little harder to see on the wall, but on the box, I mean, you can definitely see that. Now, even at this point right now, what do you think you would maybe change about this? Like, what bothers you visually about the way the spec looks for the cardboard? Yeah, it's really bright. Doesn't that kind of look like plastic? Like there's almost like a plastic wrap over top of the box? I'm not really digging that. So what would allow me to get that to not feel like plastic? What's my issue? Yeah, roughness. The highlight is still kind of sharp. That's what plastic looks like. But cardboard is really diffused, right? It's like a super blurry, dry material. So what I'm going to do is just take that roughness and just start raising that number up. And I'm going to wash that highlight on the corner of the box. And let's try maybe doing, I mean, cardboard is pretty rough. I'm going to go up to like 0.8. 0.8. See how much like softer that is already? Like the highlight became so blurred that it like washed out over that left side of the box. And if you want, you can tighten it up a little bit, like 0.6, 0.7. It's just a little experimenting to kind of feel like what number you think looks right. But I definitely want a higher roughness. Now, if the amount of the reflection was too intense, all you'd have to do is just lower down the edge color. Because you know how before you guys used a black and white texture for edge color to like control how bright the reflections look? You can just slide that edge color down if you want the highlight to be darker. So if I turn it way lower, it's going to start looking just like the diffused texture. If I have it cranked up too high, the highlight's going to be a lot more bright and start to almost like wash out the whole object. So I'll kind of keep mine a little lower. I don't want it to be too blown out. All right. So there is a subtle highlight on it. But at this point, we're done with the base layer. We didn't do any texture connections for speck at all. I'm still happy with the way that looks. A lot easier. All right. Everyone get up to this point? Just kind of getting that color and bump connected, and then just trying to get the speck to like at least feel right. And the bump should be affecting everything. It should be affecting speck because you guys connected it to the global bump. So I am going to hit escape, cancel this render, and I'm going to save this as a background, so that way when I start re-rendering it, when I do those cropped images, I don't keep getting nothing around it. So I'm going to hit the little background button in the image tool just to turn that to my sort of default background image. So that way I can still see all this stuff every time I re-render it. And again, that's that button right there. The little blue, super photorealistic mountain landscape. Okay, let's back up. So the box is good to go. We're all done with that. Now what we want to do is if you kind of go back to the layer mixer, we still have this other layer that's sort of hanging out on top of it. But we haven't really done anything with it yet. It's just disabled. Let's turn on the layer. We're going to enable it. So go back to your layer mixer, turn on layer 1's enabled checkbox. So it's on. And we want to figure out what this layer is supposed to be. And I'm treating it just like your lab. The layer we're putting over the cardboard is just going to be a really simple dirt texture. Just adding some grime to the wall or like a stain of something. So I'm going to rename this. If this was the box layer, I'm going to call this one dirt layer. Now, there's only a couple of things we really need to do with the dirt. If you had the dirt, like when you put dirt on a wall, or like if there's dust, do you think that that would really contribute to bump? Like if you had like dirt on a wall? Depends like how thick it is, right? If it's like mud, then yeah, we're going to have to start thinking about bump maps to make the dirt look like it's thick enough to be mud. But we're just trying to go for something really faint right now, so I really don't need to get into bump maps. All we're going to do is first off, on the dirt layer, on color, let's just kind of pick what color you guys want the dirt to be. Okay, we're doing it. We're going with pink dirt. Now, again, you have to kind of remember that Shane and I are grading this. And if you put pink on the wall, you better be showing me some amazing reference photo where you're like, I'm going for that. And there better be some really cool pink dirt on some wall somewhere. But we're going to do pink. That actually would allow us to see it, so I'm not against it. Let's all do bright pink, and we will definitely change this later. Bright pink. And let's render it and just make sure that it works. So I'm going to redo my IPR because I stopped mine. Redo it. Come on. And I'm going to hit R. That's beautiful. There we are. I'm going to hit R just to make sure it's within the crop. Okay. That looks great. So, yeah. We've got pink on the wall. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but it's okay. The issue right now that we're getting is it's not really cutting out the pink into some pattern. It's just blanketing everything. So this means what we need to do is we have to, like if you were in Photoshop, if you just had like a solid color and you wanted to cut that out into the shape of a dirt pattern, what would you do in Photoshop? Yeah, a mask, an alpha. We need some type of black and white texture. We're going to do the exact same thing here in Maya. So what we want to do is kind of off to the side, like somewhere around this little dirt layer off to the left, let's just make a new 2D file node and at least load in a potential dirt map. So tab, type in file, and you want to make just a file texture. Just a regular 2D file. Make that. And on the file, if you kind of hit the little folder button, in the lecture project, I do have a couple ones we could use. I think I'm going to use Dirt 26 today. In the activity, when you guys get to the lab, there's a zip file that I'm giving you guys like a ton of different dirt images. Just download the zip file. There's probably about 50, 60 of them. And they're not, I mean, they're like that. They're just random stains and splatters and, you know, coffee rings. But just download it, and you can kind of figure out which one you want to use later. But we're going to use Dirt 26 for now. There we go. Nope, leave this. We definitely want the place 2D for now. Leave that guy. So we have this. And just like before, we want to figure out what the color space would be. Now this is one of those black and white maps. These are the guys that we keep changing to raw. So once you get your image in there, color space, raw. And then remember to add your RenderMan texture controls at the top. And uncheck the linearize. It's off by default, but just make sure that's not checked. But just add the controls so they're there. Yep. You already know. So we're going to turn on alpha's luminance because that's something we just kind of need to do. Now from here, like we could connect it and as an alpha, but the reason why we may want to kind of change this a little bit is when you make these black and white files, or if you pick one of the ones I give you, that doesn't mean that it has the right density, because you may want to fade the dirt out or make it a lot darker or clumpier or play around with the contrast. So what would allow me to change the contrast of this particular dirt file? Like if you weren't happy with how bright it is, like visually, or if you want to remove part of it, what could I do to that? Yeah, I can do that ramp thing, right? Like if I do this little black and white ramp, I could then play around with how much of that dirt we see. So next to the file node, make your ramp texture again. This is the one you delete the placement on. But just put the ramp next to the file. And we've done this a few times. It's out alpha to V coordinate. If you remember nothing from the class, you'll probably at least remember the out alpha to V coordinate. That's been ingrained in you. You would have done this like 30 times before you're out of here. Out alpha to V coordinate. And I'll call this, I guess, dirt, ramp, I don't know. Dirt, contrast, maybe. Just something so I kind of know this is where I play around with the value. Now, once you kind of get that connected, we still need to figure out where that goes, because remember how my pink layer above it is just sort of covering everything. So where is the alpha going to go to fix that? This is on the layer mixer. So if you kind of look at the attributes over here, you can see the layer's turned on. There's that layer going into it right there. I don't know why it didn't update the name. It should. We'll see if that works. What I'm looking at is I just rename my layer to dirt layer and see how it's like still looking at the old naming convention. Yeah, I think when I hit render, it'll probably rename it because it did that on the box. But you'll notice below that, there's the mask. Like that's the thing we were looking for. This is your opacity for that thing. So all you're doing is just take that ramp and then middle mouse drag it to the layer 1 mask attribute. It's on your layer mixer. Middle mouse drag your ramp to layer 1 mask. Oh, look what happened. That is amazing. So the box apparently killed Kirby at some point. I'm digging that. We do have, like, it's working. It's showing the dirt. Not too crazy about the look of it, but it's there. Does everyone kind of notice theirs worked as soon as they put it in the mask? It might be doing the exact same thing mine is. Okay, so what do we want to fix on it? I mean, first off, it's what do I think of the contrast? I mean, the color is a little weird. I'm going to change that. And I also may want to move it into a different position. Because right now, like, it's in the corner of the box. I didn't pick that. It's just where it happened to line up. What is determining where that texture appeared? Why did that hit the corner of the box? Oh, just like the way the texture looks, like where it's black and... Yeah, I mean, because that's where the white part is in the texture. You were saying place 2D? Yeah. Yeah, because right now, it's there just because of the way this thing is UV. Right? I haven't even looked at the UVs on it. I mean, if you don't have to do this, but if I just took a moment to look at the UV layout for the box, this is what it looks like. It's just a lot of UVs at the top. Now, I bet if let me see how I can change this. I know it's probably here somewhere. Oh, geez, I got to figure this out. A new one. Oh, there we go. In the UV editor, there's a little trick at the top. You can pick which file you want to look at. You know how it shows you the little background thing in the UV editor? You actually can pick which file you want if there's multiple textures in there. So I'm just going to go to textures at the top of the UV editor and pick Dirt 26. This is why it's at the corner of the box, because I bet the corner of the box is that part right there. And I'm sure if I select the faces, I'm going to see the corner of the box light up. Yep. Most of the dirt is completely off the UV map. It's not even there at all. So one thing I may want to do is move this into the right spot. So to do that, we need to do, like, almost think of it like Photoshop, like taking the free transform tool and kind of scaling it down, moving it to the right position. We're going to do that right inside of Maya again. Okay, so to do that, we're going to zoom in, hit the S button, the solo button on your file node for the dirt. Make sure you can see it in the viewport if your texture button's turned on. That looks beautiful. Look how pixelated that is. That's awesome. So much resolution. Taking this back to PlayStation 1. So we want to scale it down quite a bit. On the 2D placement node right here, this guide next to it, this will allow us to do that. So all these attributes, again, the ones you've played around before was probably like the wrap, and I think a lot of you guys did the repeat UV thing a few times to like make the texture like tileable. We're not doing any of that stuff. We're just doing basic scale and transformation. That is coverage and translate frame. So we know it's too big. Let's just try scaling it down. Like let's do 0.5 width, 0.5 height. So this is width, height. See how it's not updating? Isn't that great? Right. But some of you guys are looking at this little guy and you're like, oh wait, something is happening. Notice how like when I scaled it by 50%, it shot down to the bottom left corner. You know why it's doing that and not just scaling to the center? Besides the fact that Autodesk hates you? Yeah, that like the corner is the origin of this UV space, right? That's coordinate 0, 0. So think of it kind of like the pivot point. That's just where things naturally will scale to. So as you scale it, what we want to do is move it over. Now I know we can't see it right now because my viewport's not updating, but remember in the UV editor, like it was showing the UVs all in that top half right there? So I want to move it over and up a little bit. And as soon as I do anything with translate, you'll probably see this thing kind of pops and it'll start updating again. So let's do a translate of like 0.1. Because remember, it's all 0 to 1 space. Like isn't that great? But look at the little swatch. 0.1. See how it is kind of moving? It's moving over. 0.3. Yeah, 0.5, I'll probably lose it in the other side. Yeah, now it's in the other corner. So this is definitely working. Why do you think it's gray in the viewer, though? Yeah, there's a gray color out, because when you scale the texture down, Maya's just putting this kind of weird gray filler outside of the file node because it doesn't know it's supposed to be there. So I also want to move this up. Let's do the other translate. Let's go like 0.3 or 4 up. I bet I can see that. There it is. That's still a little big, so I might actually bring the coverage down to like 0.35 maybe. And I'm going to start moving it up again. It's when you do it this way, it's a lot of trial and error because you're just kind of looking at the file node and then trying to figure out visually where it needs to be by kind of number crunching. So maybe I'll do something like that. So it's an interesting little dirt pattern on the left side of the box. Now, this isn't the easiest way to do it because you're just, again, punching in numbers until things happen to kind of line up in the right spot. Now, I know what you guys want to do. You just wish you could just go in there, grab the texture, and stick it where it's supposed to be. We're going to try doing that when we get to the next layer using projections. We'll see if we have time for that. Now, the biggest issue with this thing at the moment is even though it looks like it's in the right spot, see how outside of that we still get this kind of gray color? Like, what would that gray mean for an alpha? Like, imagine if you had this as a mask in Photoshop and you had like a nice black and white dirt pattern, then outside of that it was doing this weird gray thing. Like, what does gray mean for an alpha? 50% gray. It's like partially visible. It's like a 50-50 mix kind of thing. Now, watch what the render looks like. See how the dirt is here? It's been updating as I've been kind of working. And look what's over there. See how it's not pink? It's like blending the pink with that layer beneath it. That's not really what I want. What should this color be on the outside? It just should be solid black everywhere. So really the thing we need to figure out is where the hell is the gray even coming from? Well, that's the first problem. You guys remember fighting with that with Tony and like shading and lighting? Like this weird gray color when you're doing like projections or layered textures? It's default color on the file node. Just go to color balance. It's like the same area we hit that alpha's luminance thing. I mean, it's pretty easy to figure it out because as long as you know it's a gray color, you just look for the gray color slider. There it is. Slam it to black, and that will update. There we go. And there it goes. No more pink on the outside. Am I? Oh, yeah, that's a piece of like packaging tape on the texture. Yep. So it looks pretty good. Now be careful though, because some of you guys, when you're doing it in the lab, you still may see a line, because when you're working with these file nodes, Be careful of any of them that get clipped to the edge of the image, because if you line it up in the wrong spot, you'll just see where the edge of the file ends. So you may want to try to hide that like behind the books or off the screen somewhere so you don't see the edge of a texture. But this one actually is pretty decent. Now the only thing really from here you could maybe do, well, let's change the color. Let's not do pink. Dirt layer. I'm going to go for like kind of a dark, kind of desaturated brown or like a gray. So maybe we'll go into like the oranges. Pull that saturation back a little bit. Yeah, that's really light. It's kind of has a dust, almost like a dry kind of stucco or paint effect. It's going to bring that back. I'm really just changing the color in the diffuse layer until I get the effect I want. Do I want the dirt to be darker than the stuff behind it? Like really dark? Should it be a lighter effect? This is it set to a way darker value. Now let's say that you guys get to the point where you get the color right, like you think you do want like a really dark kind of a stain effect, but what you want to do is fade it out. You don't want it to be that visible. This is why we have this little black and white ramp that we made. Because what this is going to allow us to do is control how much of that we see. So if I hit the S on the ramp, you should be able to see it in the viewer. If I wanted to fade that out so it's less noticeable, what should be happening to the black and white if I don't want to see that much? Yeah, I need to like take the white and darken that to a gray, which means on the ramp, if you take that white color and just start darkening that down lower and lower, you're fading out the texture. Now, if I make it really dark, it's probably going to be, yeah, see how faint that is now? It's like not pull that much out of it. There we go. So I could kind of fade that back a little bit. So now it's there, but it's a lot more subtle. When you guys do this in the project, I don't need you to do this crazy cartoon thick density splatter to show me you did it. Just push it just enough so it's there, but it still feels like realistic. Just like a faint little dirt. So that's adding dirt as another layer. And again, if we could have done a lot more with that. I could have done bump on the layer. I could have done a specularity to make the dirt shiny if it was supposed to be like wet or something, but not too concerned about that. So I don't think the spec's even on that layer at all. Let's double check it. Yeah, that's all off, so it's not even doing any spec. Okay, now we're going to do another layer, and we're going to make this like a sticker or like a poster effect. I'm going to save my scene. Hasn't crashed yet. It's been a miracle. Now, when we made this thing, this only came with 2 layers. We are now talking about adding an additional layer that did not come with this. So if you look at the layer mixer, layer 2, it still has a slot for it. We just don't have anything going into it yet, so we do have to make this one ourselves. So to make the new layer, expand out layer 2, and you can see how this is the area where it's supposed to connect, but it's just not showing anything yet. Hit the little checker button next to that layer 2 slot right there. And you'll notice as soon as you do that, a new layer has just appeared in the hypershade. There it is. It actually put it kind of in a good location. Contrast. Rearranged everything on me. Wonderful. Dirt. Okay. So on this guy, I'm going to call this one sticker layer. Okay, there it is. It's not enabled yet, so if you turn on the enabled button, it'll probably go to gray again, just kind of like we saw before. Yeah, because it's that It's just a gray color covering everything. But there's now a third layer involved. And this is where you guys get to pick what type of image you want to put over the wall. Again, use artistic discretion. So let's start off with a couple of the easy things. On the sticker layer, we want to at least get some type of image in the color. Like, what is the image we want to use today? I'm just going to make a file node off to the side again, like a file texture. And on the file texture, so this is another 2D file. Let's just go to the folder. And I do have a couple in here we can use. I get Eskimo Pie. And I even have an alpha built for it. So Eskimo Pie. I'm going to load that in. This is just a 2D file loading in some random image. And if you guys want, you can go and Google, find like a poster or like a label or something you want to put on the wall. And on this guy, same thing again. It should be sRGB color space. Make sure that you add your RenderMan texture controls. And this is a color file. This isn't black and white. This is the one where under the RenderMan controls, it should be linearized sRGB on. And we know this is our color texture, so where would I connect that? Yeah, diffuse color on the new layer. So just middle mouse drag that to diffuse color on your new layer. And let's see what we get. This thing nightmares are made of. Well, there's the Eskimo Pie. It's just like the dirt because the UVs are set up a certain way. The head is at the top of the UV layout, so we're just getting a lot of creepy licking. We're going to not do that. So we're going to scale it down, put it in the right spot. It's just like before. Work with the 2D placement. So over here, go to this guy. And I'm just going to start doing 0.3, 0.3 scale. I'm just on that 2D node, 0.3, 0.3. You can hit the S on the file, too, so you can look at it. Come on. S. There we go. Yeah, it's gray. I just need to move it up so it's closer to the UVs. It's just like we did with the dirt. Oh, there it is. It's starting to appear. So let's do 0.6. That is monstrous. That's still way too big. 0.15. Lovely. This image, like right now, it's trying to map it on there like it's like a perfect square. This is not a square photo. It's actually more of like taller, like a portrait. So I may want to scale the width in a little bit. So let's do 0.05, 0.08. I'm just kind of guessing right now. I'm just trying to move this thing in the right spot. Yeah, it's based on the UVs, but this is up and down, and this is side to side. But I just kind of got lucky because my UVs are laid out where side to side is side to side. But if it was rotated the wrong way, you moving side to side visually could be just going up and down. Yeah, you can imagine how fun that is. I'm just going to move it over a little bit more, but we're pretty much almost good. Beautiful. That should be great. There it is. The sticker is really bright, I just think it looks kind of blown out compared to everything else in the shot. So if you wanted to, just on the material, kind of like you guys did before, there is, remember, that gain slider for any layer where you can, if the textures you're putting on the wall just seem out of place, too bright, too dark, use that gain slider on the diffuse area to fix the intensity. That looks ridiculous. Let's kind of fade that back. Yeah, somewhere around like 0.5 or 0.6 is a little more believable. Like, how do you see that texture in the UV editor? So if you're in here, click on the model, and then at the top, under textures, look for the file. So in this case, it would be Eskimo Pie color. And there it is. And if you like use the 2D thing, you actually can probably see it moving around. Sometimes, though, when you do the 2D placement with this, the preview for that gets really pixelated, and it's kind of hard to see it. But the viewport, you should be able to see what's happening. And again, just look at the render. I mean, the kind of nice thing about RenderMan is this IPR is updating like almost immediately every time I move something. So that's a pretty accurate representation of what's going on. The old MyIPR would have had a lot of problems. You have to constantly restart it and refresh it because it can't keep up with what you're doing. Now from here, what I want to do is figure out how do I cut out this image to, again, reveal the box behind it. So I don't have an alpha yet for this one. Yeah. Or you're just stretching. What's that? Yeah, I made an alpha for it. What if you wanted the full, like, let's say, pretend in the lab here, you wanted the full rectangular shape to be the sticker. Like, yeah, I could make a ramp. Yeah. Yeah, there's two ways to do this. You could, if you wanted to, if we go in here, you could either make a file node like I did. Like I just went in Photoshop and cut out the character. I'll show you what that looks like. I'm not going to get into that right now, just for the sake of time, but my alpha looks like that. All I did is use a wand just to like paint black in the outside, and I just did the invert and kind of paint white on the inside. So this would cut out the character if I loaded this in as a texture file, but if we wanted the whole image to appear, that doesn't mean you go into Photoshop and save out like a solid white square. I mean, you could do that, but that's a waste of file space. You can do that with a ramp, which is kind of what you were talking about. You mean so it's like in the same spot, or? Yes. You could, yeah. So if I had saved that color file out of Photoshop, and if that black and white channel was in the alpha channel of the color file, I could have just ripped that alpha out of it, and then that would have been it. Yep. So I have it as a different image. So we're going to do this two different ways, just so you can kind of see the difference. Let's try like just doing the square cutout first. So I'm going to make a ramp texture. Because the ramp, you can turn it to a solid white square. This is pretty easy. I mean, if you make a ramp, it has a gradient. You just delete the black color, and there's your white square. That's it. Make a ramp, turn it white. Wonderful. Now, when you make the ramp, the thing that we have to kind of get figured out, whether it's like the ramp or like a texture file, is we still need to make sure that alpha is in the same location, right? This is not in the same location. Because remember how to do that, we were on that place 2D node, we were just like punching in a bunch of numbers until it kind of moved where we want it to be. Right. So that's the way we want to do it. What do you think would be the issue if you guys just started copying your numbers from here to this guy? Because that would move it in the right spot, but what's the issue with doing it that way? What happens if you have an art director telling you to move it to a new location? Like, move the sticker to the left. Yeah, you're now typing in, like, whatever he wants you to do to it, you're now typing in the same number on 2 different nodes to keep the alpha and the color moving together. That's a lot of work. We don't want to do that. We want to use the same placement. So this means if you kind of simplify it, you could delete the placement node and just drag the out UV from that guy to the UV on the ramp and see how that kind of moved it in the same spot? Like, here's my sticker, tiny. That's been moved right there. And so the only thing this is missing, now that I've done the little out UV to UV, is on this ramp, I would take the default color to black. See how that kind of looks like a little cutout alpha? Yeah, all the stuff around that square would be not visible, which would allow me to see through the cardboard or the wall behind it. So this is just doing the square method. Because some of you guys may just have a square image you just want to throw on there and you're done with it. But I'm sure a lot of you guys want to do these kind of cool, intricate shapes to cut out a character. You might have, maybe it is a square poster, but you want to have a chunk of it torn. So like the corner of it's been ripped off the wall. So when you do stuff like that, you're talking about then getting into a file. There just has to be something you're making in Photoshop. Now, I've already got my file created, and I'm not going to get into how you do that right now, but just what we're going to do is just click on that texture file. Do it to me again. I'm going to do Edit, Duplicate with Connections, have a conniption, because it's going to move my nodes around again. Oh my God. I really hope they fix that in 2018. I'm just kind of rearranging it so they're in their original spot again. That's really stupid. So basically you just duplicate it. Since we're going to load in our little alpha, so if I go to that file node, it's in the lecture project. I'm just loading in this guy, and you guys would just make your own. One thing that we've kind of seen a few people do is those same dirt files we're using, like for the stain. We've had a few different students use that as like an alpha, so it looks like the sticker is torn in the shape of these really cool dirt patterns, so it's just not like a perfect cutout. We're going to load that in. And again, we're just going to go through the same thing we've done a few times now. This is a black and white map. This is the one that goes to raw. And this is the one that linearize should be off. Now looking at it, can you already tell kind of like what the only problem is if this was an alpha? Let me just zoom in a little closer here. Isn't that beautiful? What's my only problem for my alpha? Because like it has white where the character is. You can see kind of black around it. What's the one thing I'm missing before I connect it? Yes, that stuff on the outside, we already know what that is. It's the same area we've had to fix, which is that gray default color. Just slam that guy to black. That now looks like an alpha. It's just white or black, no gray. And let's just turn that guy on right there. Alpha's luminance. Now with something like this, I don't think we need to do the whole connection to a ramp. Because remember, the only reason we're doing that is because we might want to play around with contrast. I don't think I need to like play around with the contrast with the sticker alpha. It's already good. Let's just connect it. You guys know where this would go to. Like where does this go if you want to cut out a layer? Yep, the layer mask. You just go to your layer mixer. This is where we did the last one for the dirt pattern. We have an alpha for that guy right there. Layer 2 mask. You just connect in that file right to it. And let's see. That is awesome. Might have to redo it. I bet my IPR is not updating. Let me try this again. Yep. Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw what happened. When I just hit R to refresh, it didn't look like it changed. And so what I did is I just went in there and hit the IPR button again to force it to start from scratch. And that's when it kind of clicked and showed me the right information. Yeah, issue or question? Nope, that's up to you. Yeah, those are not really going to make that much of a difference. It just would make the file size bigger or smaller. Usually when I do like color textures, I have them as Targa, so they're not compressed. You guys know how JPEGs compress the color a little bit? So, I mean, you can do JPEGs for like an alpha because the compression isn't really going to impact anything. But a JPEG color file may show some weird artifacts when you're looking at it. But there it is. Eskimo Pi. It's wonderful. Now there are like a few things that we're going to want to do to kind of, because you know how we want the sticker to pop off the surface a little bit? Right now there's nothing doing that. It's just completely flat. But we did get the alpha stuff working. That's the hardest part. Now the bump is going to be super easy for us because you guys know that like on the sticker layer, there is a bump control. I mean, if you, again, go down here, there's a global bump. It's just waiting for me to connect something into it. So, again, think about what the bump should look like. If we wanted that part to stick out and the cardboard next to it to be the part that's sunk in, what should the bump texture look like? Yeah. It's the same thing as the alpha. We got lucky because that white alpha, wouldn't that also mean the white would pop out and like the black and the alpha would mean sink in? So it actually kind of worked out pretty well where the alpha we made earlier is the exact same thing we'd want for bump. It's going to give us the right result. So let's kind of look in the Hypershade. There's our alpha. Now, before I could connect it to bump, but what am I missing before I do that? Yeah, I need that bump 2D. Don't forget about the bump 2D. So make your bump 2D node. And what you're doing is just kind of put it near your alpha for your sticker. And you're going to do out alpha to bump value. So the alpha is still going to the mask. It's also going to a bump 2D node. And then all you're doing is just dragging that bump 2D to the global bump on your sticker layer. So just look for your sticker layer, scroll down until you find global bump, drag that to it. And by the way, like every time I connect to it, are you guys kind of watching what the connections are in the Hypershade? Like when I drag it, see what it's going to? Yeah, so if you guys like doing the little like noodle kind of connections that way, if you are kind of familiar with what the names are, you could drag that to the bump normal. That would do the same thing. That would still connect it. Did it work? Oh no. Oh no. It's when your IPR stops, by the way, it'll next time you hit R, it thinks you're doing a full screen render. Like, see how it's like IPR, IPR, not IPR? I gotta hit that button again. I just waited too long, so it kind of ended the IPR. Come on, there it is. And then we'll hit R, Bueller, R. Yeah, there should be a little bit of an edge to it. Yeah, I can kind of see it. I think it is there. It's a little hard to see, but it feels like there's an edge. Let me just try turning the bump 2D depth to 0. I'm going to take that crop. I'm just dragging in the corners so I can focus on just the sticker for a second. So I don't need to render the whole box. R. There we go. That's a lot faster. Yeah, I want to make sure it's working, so I'm going to be doing like 0 bump depth. Does it change? I'm going to do like 2 bump depth. Can't quite tell. Let me try redoing the IPR. This thing might be stuck. Are you guys seeing it, like lift off the surface at all? It might be hard to see with this one, where it's just not at the right angle to do it, but it should be working. Doesn't feel like it. I feel like I'm missing one thing somewhere. Oh, normal. Weird. Are you doing this with me, Shane? I don't know if you're following. I think it is. It's probably just really subtle. It does seem like there's kind of an edge to it. We'll see when you guys get to the lab. It should work. I just have a feeling it's probably so subtle it's not showing up. Not to mention, I haven't even done like specularity. So because there's no highlight, it might just have a hard time really showing us anything. Because the sticker should be a little shiny. Let's just try turning on the spec area and just seeing if that maybe makes a difference. So I'm going to go to that layer, enable primary spec, crank the gain up, crank the edge color up a little bit. Let's see if this updates. And let me make it rougher. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Here's the highlight. Man, that does look flat. Huh. That ain't good. Yeah, even though it should be working, I'm a little confused at why it is not. Mine does seem really flat, even when I start pushing the reflectivity on it. Oh, wow. I hit the S on like the bump 2D node to like look at it. That's a lot of bump. Yeah, that thing should be working. I'm not really too sure why it's not translating through to the render. Oh, this happens to me every lecture. I just kind of like ignore it at this point. This is that issue. You know how I haven't used the material viewer in the Hypershade? It broke again for the 100th time this month. It's just letting me know. Yeah, I just wish there was a way to disable that completely, like because I don't even have the window visible, and it's still acting like it's trying to draw the shader. Wonderful. Yeah, we'll see what happens when we get to the lab. I am a little surprised the bump didn't work. That could be an issue. Well, let me check the globals here. That doesn't have bump. It feels like the box even got like really smooth out of nowhere. No, that's actually is kind of bumpy, yeah. Weird. What's that? Yeah, it's raw. I think it could be more of a coincidence where, because the light is hitting that side of the box almost directly. And look at the box itself. See how the bump looks a lot more noticeable as it goes to that side of the cardboard? Exactly. I'm wondering if I just move this guy to the other side, if it's going to put it in a better position to interact with the light. All right, we're going over there. Oh, it's there. Yep. Okay. Well, that's reassuring. I thought like something was broke. Because remember, bump is just like an illusion. It's a trick. It's really dependent on how the lights hit it. So if I move this around the corner, it's the light's coming at a more of a acute angle to sort of create those little highlights in the side. But you can see it is definitely working. I just had the sticker in a weird spot. So there it is. This is what you guys are going to be kind of doing today. Is just working on the wall, get the base wall texture set up. Try to get like just the wall to match the reference, so that at least feels pretty close. But as far as you guys putting the dirt and the sticker or the poster or label, whatever you want to put on the wall, I'm going to let you guys kind of figure out what you guys want to do. But just make sure you are at least meeting the minimum requirements. One dirt layer, one other sticker or something going over top of the wall. And again, please use artistic discretion because it still needs to feel believable. We get a lot of really strange turn-ins for this. We had a lot of Deadpool for about a good 2 months. We've had decapitated chocobos from Final Fantasy, which is very sad. That hurts me a little bit. Let's not kill chocobos. Let's maybe not do 20 blood splatters on the wall. All right. So that's it, guys. We'll still do roll at like 3:45, but we're going to be working on this thing pretty much the whole lab.